Okay? You're going to like it. There's only a civil action. Now, I want to get to, because I'm now way behind, I want to turn over about 3 or 4 pages from there to quotes and notes from the past and present. And I'm not going to read all of this, but I am going to read a couple things. John Adams said, "I am firmly of the opinion that there never was a paper pound, a paper dollar, or a paper promise of any kind that ever yet obtained a general currency as money, but by force or fraud." Okay, and then you can finish reading the rest of it. The Federalist Papers, number 79, said, "In the general course of human nature, a power over a man's substance amounts to a power over his will, and we can never hope to see realized in practice the complete separation of the judicial from the legislative power in any system which leaves the former dependent for pecuniary resources on the occasional grants of the latter. As long as the judiciary gets their check from the other 2 branches of government, we're baked." Okay? Now, John Maynard Keynes on the next page, who wrote Keynesian Economics, said in 1920, "By a continuing process of inflation, governments can confiscate secretly and unobserved an important part of the wealth of its citizens. There is no subtler nor surer means of overturning the existing basis of society than to debauch the currency. The process engages all the hidden forces of economic law on the side of destruction and does it in such a manner which not one man in a million is able to diagnose." Okay? When they apply public policy to us and we do not understand what's going on, and by a series of inflation and deflation and inflation and deflation and the controlling of the economy up and down, what we're left with is nothing. Okay? We have no money. We have no property. We have no substance. Okay? They take everything. They take it in the form of employment taxes. They take it in the form of gas taxes. They take it in the form of every kind of tax there is. And by the way, the only function of government in any form is to generate revenue. That's all they do. Okay? They're like one big, huge accounting firm. Okay? And every function they do is designed to raise money. And the greatest thing that they ever did was start with rules, regulations, and memos. Because now they have memos that supersede the law. Sir, I can't do that. I have a memo. But the law says, no, you don't understand. I have a memo. I don't know, you know. At some point in time, for your own edification, I want you to read Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. And this is just a microcosm of the whole thing. I don't want you to do it right now. Okay? But I do want you to read this 3 or 4 paragraphs that I put in here, because I want to move on. There's a page entitled Money, a couple pages over. The following statements come from several sources, from Congress, Supreme Court cases, and the Federal Reserve. All stem from the passage of H.G.R. 192. Here's the way money works, right here. The Treasury writes up an interest-bearing bond for $1 billion. The Federal Reserve gives the Treasury a $1 billion credit for the bond and has created out of nothing a $1 billion debt which the American people are obligated to pay with interest. By the way, note where that comes from. The House Banking and Currency Committee, 1964. I'm not making this stuff up. Okay? The next one is a court case. A debt is not paid by the giving of a note. Now wait a minute. Let's see. Federal Reserve note. By the way, if you want to have some fun, I was at dinner one night with some of my friends from Utah in Boise, and we'd eaten, and this little girl brings us a check, and I said, oh, you know, I forgot to ask you, do y'all take Federal Reserve notes? And she looks at me and she says, I don't know. I'll have to ask the manager. And so she comes back 3 or 4 minutes later and she says, the manager says we don't take those. Is that true? Joseph was there. The manager says we don't take those. Now I'm feeling bad. Because now all these people are watching. And so I brought her over and I just kind of held it under there and I showed her what it said, and she says, oh man, I didn't know. I said, I know. You're not taught. So if you want to conduct another experiment, here's how people pay attention. I do this all the time. I'm crazy or mean or something, but 6 o'clock, 6:30 in the morning, and I walk up to the little lady in the airport and I says, I need some change for the paper machine. And she says, what would you like? I says, well, I'll have 4 quarters, 5 dimes, and 6 nickels. And I handed her a dollar bill. She counted me out 4 quarters, 6 dimes. And on the 3rd nickel, she looks at me and she says, that's not right. People do not pay attention. They just act on your instructions. He couldn't possibly be, telling me something wrong. That's why McDonald's now, in some of the cities, when they make change, they, instead of saying how much the change is, they also put how many quarters to put out, and how many dimes, and how many nickels, and how many pennies. This is true. I've seen it. I looked at that and I said, wow, I could even make change here. I mean, it's amazing. The dumbing down of society. A note is only a promise to pay and not payment. This is only a promise to pay and not payment. Checks are not money in themselves. They are simply order forms instructing banks and other depository institutions, such as savings banks and credit unions, to move transaction balances, which are money. Banks don't keep cash in checking accounts and don't transfer currency or coin when acting upon a check's instructions. Now note that little publication. I bet you thought, from the Federal Reserve Board of New York. Now everybody goes around saying, they don't tell us anything. Let me tell you something. They tell us everything. Everything. It's right out there in front of us. We just choose not to look. Because you see, they invented this little device called a programming instrument, otherwise known as a TV. And every Sunday afternoon in the Sunday paper, you get this week's programming guide. And you get to partake and choose of which kind of programming you're going to get this week. Is that not true? So you can get your mind programmed with Friends, ESPN, HBO, C-SPAN, or any number of things. But guess what? You get to choose. Nobody's forcing you. Remember what the scripture says, choose you this day whom you will serve. Don't tell me you didn't know. I never had opportunity. Because there's only one thing any of us have in common. It says, all men are created equal. Is that true? Is it? Can you do what I do? Can I do what you do? Can I think the way you think? Can you think the way I think? Who would want to?